Welcome to the G-Lab Group podcast. We call this Telling the Story with Pixel. I'm your host, Eli Silva, and I have the privilege to lead the G-Lab Group. And today, I are my co-host here with me, and you are?
Hi, I am Nick. I am the digital fundraising ecosystems manager here at G-Lab Group. So I lead everything digital fundraising, whether that's emails, ads, and web.
And I'm Vanessa Ladiro Silva, and I am the art and communications manager here at G-Lab.
So last week we talked about campaign planning and how to do brand awareness campaigns, and we picked on the summer camp campaign and all the assets we deliver. But sometimes that is hard to do and execute, and especially if you are a one-man band at the Salvation Army unit. And today we're going to sit back and say, okay, when you are a short staff, how do you do it? Because at the end of the day, today, G-Lab is a larger group, but we didn't start this way. We started really, really small, and we had to balance that time management, if you will. So, Vanessa, can you walk us through a little bit through your processes and where your hat as where you were starting, maybe it was yourself, and now how we do it today?
Sure. I think balancing strategy and execution is always a challenge, even today when we have multiple team members. I'd say in the early days, we had to balance the future strategy, current execution, future execution. And I'm going to think my hat, I was primarily focused on social media and maybe web banners. At that time, that's very small scope, but I had to do it for a lot of different units. And the most difficult thing to balance is I was, as I said, doing the strategy, designing the posts, scheduling the posts, taking corrections, improving the posts, looking at the data, analyzing. So there's a lot of steps. My main balance is that for the month, I'd probably have a meeting with someone to bounce ideas off of, and normally, generally. Sometimes I didn't have anyone to meet with, and that was just time to put pen to paper and just jot down ideas. That was about once a week. And then during the week it's execute, but every morning I'd probably dedicate like 30 minutes or an hour to just accumulate my ideas again and regroup.
On your style, was that a little bit every day, or in my style, I try to take Fridays for that. So when I started G-Lab and I had to do some communications, whatever, or strategy or even business, I try to separate Fridays and say, okay, this is my day where I don't book any meetings, and I try not to have anything else on my plate but strategy. That is easier said than done, right? But hey, that was me. So yours is kind of a little bit every day?
It's a little bit of both. So my days would be Wednesdays, because for me, it's a lie that I can't. I get a bunch of emails on Fridays.
First.
So Mondays I get a bunch of emails. Fridays I get a bunch of emails. Tuesday and Thursday I'm working on the emails from from Monday and preparing for the Friday emails. So Wednesday's the day where no one bothers me. So that's the day I put a focus block on my calendar. I try not to book meetings, but someone, Eli, always books meetings on Wednesdays. So that's, let's say, the day I get more creative or strategic. But every day I do a 30-minute regroup of the strategy, because I can get very bogged down in the details and trying to get everything broken.
Though that regroup is yourself, or you actually meet with your team?
In the beginning, it was myself. Now with the bigger team, we do a regroup on Mondays and Fridays.
Got it. All right. So once you have that strategy, you pull that off, what is the process? Who approves it? Like, how do we get into execution knowing that we're going to have the least amount of changes and variables at the end of the road?
Yeah, so it can be pretty complex to navigate. Okay, how much am I going to let the approver, let's say in my case it's a final client, right, see beforehand? Because if you let someone see something before it's done, you can get a bunch of changes before you have the vision fully, let's say, fleshed out. But at the same time, you don't want to develop all the assets and you're going to receive a fundamental change. Like, let's say I chose to talk about feeding and this unit needs to talk about emergency financial assistance. If I develop all the assets on feeding, it can be an uphill battle to...
So if I am a communications director or manager locally at the Salvation Army, you advise that I hold back until I have something sizable instead of going to my boss and show him a little bit every day.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I knew that before.
This is very anecdotal. Don't quote me on this, but I've noticed that when I work with
quoting you.
don't quote me on this, but I've noticed in my limited experience anecdotally that when I work with people who are Gen X, if I show them something that isn't done, I receive a million changes. But if I show them something that's done, I receive no changes.
So you actually okay. Let me get this back. So you actually deliver or present your strategy based on the generation of your Nick, do you agree?
Yeah. So when you go to a meeting with a reviewer, with a client, I think you do have to gauge kind of where their mind is, and I mean their generation does really
know your boss
affect
basically.
that. Yeah, know your boss, whether that's you, whether that's Eli, where I'm presenting something.
Yeah.
You are, as Gen X, we also notice, hey, Eli likes to have a nice full vision presented to him. So if you're going to go get something approved, it's better to have that full vision, because you might receive maybe not less corrections, but more actionable corrections.
Okay, so communications directors out there in the field, now you have to know who your boss is and who you present to. So if there's a Gen X like me, according to these kiddos, you have to present a little bit more of a fleshed out idea and not just drawings, because if not, we Gen Xers try to change the whole thing from scratch.
And it might not be a generational thing. I think this is more of just like a
Personality,
the type of stuff that you're presenting. So you're typically presenting this communications plan to communications, whoever that approver is typically in a more senior position. When you're presenting something for a review, I think when it's helpful to know who you're presenting to. So, I mean, it's easy if you're presenting to your boss, but if you're presenting to a board, you don't present too often. I think just having these kind of, if you're not presenting a full fleshed out strategy, you should at least present your plan going forward to complete that, because otherwise you're leaving them to think about the plan for you, and they'll give you a plan that might not align with what your team does.
There you go. So now to recap a little bit where we are. So we started like, okay, how do you separate yourself? How do you set up time for planning? And okay, for you, Vanessa, it's Wednesdays, although I interrupt your planning. For me, it was Fridays, and now for you, it's a little bit every day or twice a week and whatever. So it varies according to your style, but you definitely have to be mindful and block out some time for planning. If you don't have planning, if you don't stick your head out of the box a little bit, you're always catching your tail, and you are really not knowing necessarily where you are. You might be busy, but you may not be effective. I remember when Jen used to say, there's a lot of movement without, a lot of motion without movement. So it's a lot of work, but it's not going anywhere, because you need to set out the time and do some planning. Now that we have the plan and you're running through your Gen X boss, didn't, change anything. How do you execute back in the days when you started by yourself, and now how we are executing today?
I think truly for me, the biggest challenge is not strategy or execution, it's that in between. I like to call it the outline version. Whether I'm delegating to future me, as I like to call her, or I'm delegating to someone else on my team, that's the hardest part. Because no one else can do it for you. So if you're the person that's leading the strategy, you're the person that understands the strategy, you're the person that knows the program. If you know everything, you're the one that has to put, okay, this is what the task is. This is what the deliverable is. This is what the context is. For every task, it can bog you down very quickly. And I think that that's still my challenge today. How I manage it is that during those strategy meetings, I'm already thinking in the task structure. So I'm not just thinking about the final deliverable, I'm thinking, how are we going to get this done? And I clip my own wings sometimes. So sometimes I have like these big ideas of big communications pieces I want to do, and I'm like, who's going to do that? Future me's not going to have time to do that. So I'm thinking about like, how long will that take me? How many meetings do I have next week? And that's what I'm doing during the strategy meeting to mitigate that transition from strategy to outline to execution. So that's what it looks like for me right now. And even back then, it's just like managing the outline.
Got it. Once that communication plan is done, last week we talked about summer camp. Awesome. Now this is kind of a strategy laid out, and basically how we separate ourselves, time for planning and execution and so forth. How do we deliver? How do we implement?
So for me, I like a project management tool. So we've used Asana or Wrike. The reason I like that is because it gives us deadlines and due dates. I think early on, I really learned that if we don't have hard deadlines and due dates, everything becomes negotiable. And if everything's negotiable, nothing gets done.
Gosh.
So we have to put hard deadlines for everything. So something that for me would seem irrelevant, like draft copy, and I'm like, I'll get draft copy done in 30 minutes. I need to schedule out those 30 minutes or else it'll keep getting pushed by an urgent meeting. So that's the first thing, is setting hard deadlines. After that, it's setting when do I need to send things to proof to someone. So we've decided that for us, it's sending proof when we have final copy. So for that, it means there's an internal proofing for copy. So there's like 3 layers of proofing before a client sees it. Then after the client approves it, no one touches it. Then it goes to design. There's internal proofing for design, and then there's external proofing for design. After that, then we go to publishing. And then after publishing, there's review of the publishing. And then there's a few months down the road, review of the data after the publishing. And I mean this for web, social.
Hold on a second. You said a few months down the road.
Well, because I look quarterly. I know someone like Nick, you guys deal with like live dashboards.
Oh goodness,
Yeah,
I've seen Nick with the send button waiting on an approval, and the send button just clicking, like flashing on your screen. So I'm gonna get back to you, Nick, in just a second as far as timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So communications wise, last week we talked about 90 days at least. I mean, we talked yearly, annually, but then the planning and all that and execution is a quarterly basis. You just said that. And what else do you have about delivering and implementation?
You mean like in terms of like tools or?
No, in terms of our timing. Like, okay, so 90 days we started doing the planning. You set up your time for planning. You have all these approval layers. And what else? After everything is approved, how do we implement, let's say, social media for now?
Okay, yeah. So for social media, a lot of the brunt work for social media is done before it's approved. So approval is the final step because of the way approval softwares work for social. For us, the timeline looks something like strategy for that month for social media for this topic. So very micro strategy, 2 hours, assigned for a span of 1 day. Then writing the calendar, 4 hours. We give you 4 days to write those 4 hours. Then designing the calendar, we like to give a week and a half, depending how complex the calendar is, meaning if there's like a lot of reels, if we need to make more carousels, so how many pieces there are, a week and a half. As you can see, if we're posting monthly, that's already a lot of our time. It's just in that end. Then we try to leave 2 weeks for proofing, because if corrections come in, we need time to, okay, now we have to go back and correct all those assets that took us a week and a half to make. We need a week and a half to fix. So we try to leave 2 weeks for proofing. Sometimes it doesn't work out like that. If we received a lot of corrections the month before, that means it pushes our next month over. So it's finding that balance of how soon ahead can we send proofing with good strategy and balancing the amount of corrections we might receive.
Well, if I zoom out a little bit, I always like to see, okay, we're focusing on communications right now, but then we do that part, and everything we do has to create some form of measurement, whether it is brand awareness or content consumption and so forth. But ultimately, when I turn around and look at Nick and we talk about digital fundraising ecosystem, although this episode isn't about digital fundraising, but can we use or how we use any of these resources to potentially generate funds for the Salvation Army?
Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at communications as a whole, I think in the end, everything we do is communications, whether you're talking social media, fundraising, emails, we're always communicating. So what we do, and we talked about this last episode, so if you haven't listened to that, make sure to go back and listen to that one. But we coordinate a lot of our communications from the kind of comms team to the fundraising team. So yes, of course, we use a lot of the same maybe video assets. When they create a reel, that we look at that and say, hey, that would be a great ad. That would be a great email to our donors to send. We send that to our donors. We share that via email because we know there's some donors on social media, some donors on the website, but a lot of donors will only open something from us on their email. So we'll send an email with this amazing video story if it's impactful. Or in the case of what's coming up disaster season, the communications team has put together a few like great social media post resources that now I looked at that and say, hey, that'd be a great thing to adapt for our donors. So we can put that together into an email, into a PDF or something that we can share and say, hey, disaster season's coming up. Here's how you can be prepared. So it's the same message in a different format, maybe worded a little bit differently because we know we're talking directly to our donors, but the message is the same. And I think that's one of the amazing things that the Salvation Army really has is the message that you're telling on social media and to your donors via email is always going to be the same because it's that same message of we're here to help. But you can tell your donors, hey, we're here to help you and we're here to help our community.
Now, who makes that translation or adaptation? Is that the word? Who sits and say, hey, that's a great message for parents to send kids to camp, but this needs a little tweak. So now we can transform that and guide it towards donors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we've done is we've made that part of, like you've been talking about, the planning process you do every Friday, Vanessa does every Wednesday. I have a planning process, but that also includes meeting with Vanessa and her team. We usually do that once or twice a month, looking at the upcoming content and saying, hey, we'll pick out these pieces. And then when we're developing our strategies, kind of our short-term strategy for the next month, we make sure that we include the pieces that we've identified. And then as those pieces are developed on the comm side, we'll also add another task in Asana with another deadline, like Vanessa said, to say, hey, let's rewrite this a little bit for donors. Let's redesign this a little bit for donors. And so we have that piece ready for an email as well as a social media post.
Perfect. We've mentioned Asana, okay, and project management is super important for us, obviously managing spinning so many plates. And it's not different, though, for a smaller unit at the Salvation Army. When you have so many things going on, I recommend to have a project management software. Now, softwares will put out whatever you put in. So you can have the best of the project management softwares in the world, and it won't give you anything. Now, I'm going to kind of bounce this question. I'm going to start with you, Vanessa. What are the challenges with project management? Yes, the software is there, but can you name a few that, jump right now?
I think translating ideas and vision into tasks and mitigating corrections. I think that's basically, if I could change my job title, that's what I do all day. I think yesterday I was telling you I sat down 4 hours trying to translate a big task, which was a shot list for a 7-day event, into sizable social media posts that I needed my team to pre-plan. No one else has been to that event. I'm the only person that's been there, so no one else can do it. And it was 4 hours just writing out the task. And it's not quicker for me to do it myself because there needs to be design, there needs to be copywriting.
Now, is every task like that, or that's an special?
That's an example of like my main challenges is when I do encounter tasks like that. There are some tasks, especially when I have great partnerships with team members I've been working with for years, I can be like, hey, do what you did last month. And that's the task. Keep doing what you're doing.
Do it again.
Yeah. But this time say June.
Right. Okay. Now, on your end, project management, whether it's the software or daily practices, what challenges do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of touching on what Vanessa said, it's sometimes a challenge to think about something you want to get done in terms of tasks you can break down, you can delegate, you can assign. So I think that's one really important part of when you're doing your planning is not just thinking about the big overall things you want to accomplish, but breaking down those overall tasks into subtasks is what we use as subtasks. So you can say, hey, well, I really want this amazing piece to go out. Well, to start, someone needs to write it. Then someone needs to proof that. Then someone needs to design that. Then someone needs to approve that. Then you can get to the point of maybe having something to send out. So now you've broken down that into tasks. Now that's actionable. Because if you just have a task to create this, that's not something that's actionable. That's not something you can sit down and work on a specific step of unless you've already broken it down into those tasks. And I think that's a different mindset that's difficult to do at first in your daily planning. Beyond just, here's the things I want to get done today, it's, hey, let's break this down into actionable steps to get it done.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit different, though, because for me, A is so multifaceted, like it's different. It's just like different aspects. And I try to say or to see what needs my attention. So what is there anybody waiting on me for this? So that needs my attention immediately. So, or as soon as I can, so that person can move forward, whether it's a decision making or whatever. Then what is information? So if it's just information, I may probably move that and kind of snooze it in my inbox and say, okay, that's Saturday morning reading, or ditch it altogether, whatever. And then what needs my doing? And when there, in my case, business proposals and meetings or whatever, something that I need to write, just like you said, Vanessa, is like something that you need to do. And man, sometimes it's hard to get that part. But what I found is like when I alter that sequence and I start doing my own thing, and then next 2 days I ask for that video and they say, hey Eli, I sent you that video 2 days ago and hasn't been approved. Gosh, that project management component is hard, but I prioritize it that way. It's like, okay, what needs my attention and so forth. So guys, I think this has been a really informative episode so far. Next week we are preparing something that has to do with the transition that the Salvation Army, especially here in the Southern Territory, USA, we have to go through on website platforms. And we are gathering information and working closely, not just with our partners, but also the leadership at THQ to see what to expect. Can we have a checklist? Can we have something? How can we prepare for that transition? So I'm looking forward to a very interesting and time-sensitive episode next week, all right? So anything else? Any final thought?
No, I think that's all for me.
Nothing about camp like last week, like between the two of you had 1 week of camp and you were preaching about camp. Never even jump in the swimming pool. Come on. Any final thoughts on your end?
No, ready to jump in that pool now.
That's ready to jump in that pool. Well, thank you for every listener we have out there. This is Eli Silva, Vanessa, and Nick from the G Lab Group, and this was Telling the Story with Pixels.